Hello Internet, I'm the Disney Brain, and it's been a while since I've made this kind of video, but the nature of my channel has changed rather drastically since the last time I talked about just the channel itself, so I figured it's about that time. So, to all my fellow Ranger lovers, allow me to take you on a different kind of journey this time around, and maybe answer a few questions you've always wondered along the way. A little over 2 years ago, I was just doing my own thing, when suddenly I was struck with the inspiration to make videos. That was partly because I was still trying to find a job at the time and had far too many hours free. So, how did I come up with the Disney Brain as a name? It's largely because that's the type of reviews I was making early on. Until about, let's say 5 months in, I was only reviewing DCOMs and Disney shows, which for reasons that I still can't quite wrap my head around, garnered me an amazing following. Where the brain part comes from has absolutely nothing to do with how smart I think I am, but rather, how much thinking a collective of us can do and add to the mix. All I ever wanted to do with this channel, primary goal number one, is not to convince people that my opinions are right, because my points and perspectives are just my own. My real purpose here is to present arguments and points from a perspective that you might not have considered, to analyze and discuss ideas and concepts that you might not have thought of before, especially since nobody really talks about the narrative of Power Rangers. I don't think I can overstate the value of understanding the perspectives of others, which, for my money, is far, far more valuable than simply agreeing with someone. I don't know if I've accomplished that goal, but you guys can let me know how I'm doing down below. Most of you consider me a pretty big Power Rangers fan, but it wasn't always that way. I was a 90s kid through and through, so when Power Rangers hit TV screens, I was there for it, except very, very, very young. So while I did watch Power Rangers for a number of years back then, I, like many young people, didn't really understand it past the color schemes and the giant robots. It was actually kind of funny. You see, I dressed up as White Ranger Tommy for Halloween way back when. One of my friends, who clearly knew more about Power Rangers than I did at the time, told me to go talk to that one girl who dressed up as the Pink Ranger. In retrospect, the answer to why was clear, but back then, I had no idea what was going on. Sidebar, never ended up talking to that girl, but maybe for the best. Let's just say this particular Kimberly had quite a few Tommies around her, if you catch me. And even then, it wasn't until a few years later where the whole girls being attractive thing really hit me. As the years went by, the Power Ranger toys struck me as more interesting than the actual show. But things started to change, due in large part to one memory of mine that I don't think I'll ever forget. I was an easily frightened kid growing up. Never went on rides that seemed too fast or too scary, and you could forget about roller coasters, no thank you. So there I was with my family at a carnival down in weirder everyday Florida. My parents somehow convinced me to go on this somewhat scary ride. It was dark, it was kind of loud, and it was a little too fast for my liking. It was not pleasant at all. But then, something happened. You see, at the end of that horrifying experience, my mother pointed at one of the walls, told me to look up, so I did. And just guess who was painted on it. I wasn't scared anymore, because even tiny little me knew that they never were. I couldn't tell you if that carnival ride was supposed to be Power Rangers themed or not, and if any of you older viewers know what I'm talking about, even as a distant memory, let me know. But as cheesy as it sounds, I'd like to think that they did save me back then. From there, I considered myself a real Ranger fan. Even back then, when the details didn't click with me yet because I was still so young, I felt like I understood Rangers at an emotional level, enough to memorize the TV schedule, eagerly await the opening credits, and jump up and down every time they were finally on TV. I even learned their names. And you better believe that I had my butt in those theater seats twice over to see the original 2 big screen movies. They would replay those things on VCR all the time back in grade school, and I'd lose myself in them. But as time marched on, I got involved in other things, watched other shows, then got way more invested in Pokemon, since that show had a popular game that everyone was playing. I didn't know it was happening at the time, but I think my fandom was starting to die down. My dad was always a big sci-fi guy. He grew up on the original Star Trek and still watches all the latest installments religiously. The irony of that being that it wasn't Kirk or Picard, but Andros and his crew who sparked my initial interest in the Final Frontier. The parts of In Space I watched were amazing, but when Lost Galaxy came around, It was as if my very spirit had ascended into a higher realm of being. I did go out and buy that Megazord, of course, but this time around, it was more than that. For the first time, I felt like I knew the Rangers beyond just their colors. They weren't just heroes, they were people, which to me made them that much more heroic, and in the case of one Ranger in particular, that much more perfect. A few years back, my elementary school had us watching, or rather, re-watching the original Power Rangers movie. During the film, there would always be a couple of kids going gaga over Kimberly, just like that one girl I mentioned before who dressed the part a few Halloweens ago. And for the life of me, I could not understand any of them. 1999 rolls in. Oh, I get it now. Ironically enough, I became the one nobody understood because everyone else in the know was crushing on the Amazon while I was captivated by the scientist. From then up until Mystic Force, I missed a few episodes and didn't watch a ton of Lightspeed Rescue or s.p.d. while it aired, but I never missed a season. While Mystic Force was airing though, I never really could get into it. I was obviously much older then, so I could ask myself the big question: am I too old for this now? Maybe the fact that this Ranger season about 4 Harry Potters and 1 Malfoy isn't doing it for me anymore is a clear sign. But even still, I rewatched the older seasons all throughout later middle school and high school, even caught a few marathons on Jetix during choice weekends. But the most recent Rangers were out of sight and out of mind again. Heck, when Overdrive happened initially, I never even knew about it. That was more on Disney's lack of promotion on the back end of their reign, but honestly, there's no chance Operation Overdrive of all seasons would have helped reignite the flame at that point in time, and filling the void was basically everything on Toonami, including a relatively new set of heroes and a new best girl. Looking back at it, it was odd that I never looked more into the apparent lack of new Rangers, but school was getting harder and I needed to start thinking about college, and all that icky real-world stuff took priority. But then, while rewatching Wild Force, I randomly asked myself, whatever did happen to the Power Rangers? I remember them doing some magic-based stuff, but did they ever continue? Overdrive at that point had ended, but it didn't strike me as interesting initially, or even after the fact, so first, I decided to watch the current season, Jungle Fury, and with one listen of the theme song, I felt my fandom flowing back into me like it was 1999 all over again. And the season was pretty damn excellent too. Here's the crazy thing about RPM though. I watched the first episode and hated it. No joke, could not stand the characters as first presented, mainly Dylan and Scott. I didn't actually watch it until after all of Samurai had finished. Since my college didn't have access to Nickelodeon, I actually didn't know Samurai was a thing either until about 6 episodes in. And for a time, not now mind you, but for a time, I would have actually rated it higher than RPM. I know, it sounds made up, but I didn't mind Samurai at all initially, but something about the way RPM opened just irked me. Maybe I just wasn't ready for such a dramatic aesthetic shift. Needless to say, it took a few years, but both of those opening positions completely flipped. With Samurai, I was watching every episode week to week, and there are still a couple good ones in there, so the badness didn't really sink in until I took a step back and thought about things more collectively. Then, I gave RPM another chance, and by episode 2, couldn't turn away. It became the Death Note of Ranger seasons for me, brilliantly progressed and perfectly binge-worthy. And for the most part, I can't physically binge anything. Like, I love Star Wars. I love it. But I do not have the energy to do the original trilogy all in one sitting. Cannot do it. But with Megaforce, it didn't take me as long as with Samurai to realize that things were not gonna get better. It was the first time ever, where I watched a Ranger season and I just did not care if they won or lost. I hated the way that felt. But that team never really understood emotional expression, so I doubt they could empathize. But I kept on watching, because cameos and legendary battle and all that, which were both a little disappointing at best, in addition to feeling like a dirty trick retrospectively, since nothing good happened prior to any of it. Not realizing how problematic it all was initially, made me realize something. That this franchise is never going away from me, because despite itself at times, I will always love it. And Dino Charge reminded me why. I'll admit it, I was scared to give it a chance, given what I had just witnessed, but that theme song, oh, it brought me back, just like with Jungle Fury years before that. And that first episode had me convinced that my continued faith had finally been rewarded after back-to-back disappointments. I didn't realize how much I needed characters like Tyler, Shelby, and Kendall in my life, and even Ivan and Riley and Coda were great to have. But then Dino Supercharge happened and, they went Neo Saban on us all over again. Still the best Super season though, I'd say, and Heckle had his moments, which brings us close to the present day. And the rest, you've all been here for. One thing I definitely did not think was possible was to gain over 20,000 subs and counting because of my love for Power Rangers. It's impossible to properly express how much it means to me that so many of you have passionately supported my passion. But because of that and my beefier real-life schedule, it does mean other types of videos have fallen through the cracks. As hard as it might be for some of you to hear, that reality was all but inevitable. I loved making Disney videos, and I'm not saying I'm done making them, just to be clear, but I am saying that over time, they felt progressively more tedious. Something people just expected from me, more so than something I genuinely wanted to do, or felt like I should do. Something where I felt like I ran out of things to say months ago. I'm sorry if hearing that turns any of you off from this channel. I really am, and in your defense, I've been pretty terrible about updating you the viewers regarding what changes I'm trying to make or what changes have already been made. Understand that my content choices never had the intention of slighting or disregarding any of you. Over time, it just became more clear to me than ever that I'd eventually make this shift, because Rangers, more than any other franchise, is what I love the most. And hopefully, this video has allowed all of you a deeper look into how that love has molded, grown, and developed over time. These last 2 years have been an interesting time. A lot has changed, both on my channel and in the real world. Lots of highs and lows on both sides. But one of the things that has helped keep me sane through all of it is writing. When I'm not making videos or working my full-time job, I'm writing up a new story. Well, as new as it can be since those stories are based in the Ranger universe. Writing for those characters has taught me a lot about myself, in addition to inspiring several video ideas. It also gave me a deeper appreciation and understanding of the Power Rangers as a whole, which at some point led to me finally making a Power Rangers video over 1.5 years ago. And for as weird as it might sound, I'd rather you guys didn't watch my original top 10 best Ranger seasons video. It's overly simplistic, my arguments aren't very well thought out, and that's on top of it being embarrassingly out of touch with my current thoughts and feelings. So, I'll create an updated top 10 seasons video down the line that will ideally be a much better finished product. So, with all that said, I'll now shift to addressing questions some of you guys either have asked or might have thought about. The first being, will I ever do a face reveal? The answer? No, probably not. The fact of the matter is, I feel way more comfortable as an analyst who lets the ideas do the speaking, rather than potentially becoming another YouTube personality. But, that said, if I ever obtain both the time and the finances to attend a Power Morphicon or something of the like, then I will inform you all that I'll be attending. And if any of you happen to be around, we can do a meetup or something. That would be fun. But as far as actually showing my face on camera, highly unlikely. Also, even though no one has asked it, I'm of the mindset that every Ranger or Ranger character with the same last name as another is somehow related. Because, if not, why even give two brainy glasses-wearing scientists the same last name? It's not like Morgan is a super common surname like Johnson or something, and even their first names sound similar, so there's gotta be something there, right? And I certainly don't buy the happenstance excuse they gave prior to Dino Charge's release. And yes, I know who Linkara is, for the many people who have asked. Okay, so truth be told, I couldn't come up with that many questions, but it's a good enough start for all of you guys to ask your own. So you can treat this video like an AMA. Ask whatever you want, and I'll try my best to answer it, regardless of topic, so go crazy with it. One last thing, as it pertains to the stories I mentioned, since a couple of you have asked about that as well. I've only allowed a handful of my real-life friends to read it so far, because I'm genuinely scared about how good it is. But I'm finally ready to place that fear aside. It would seriously mean the world to me if you guys would take a look at it, and ideally give me some feedback about what you liked, what you didn't, what worked, what could have been improved, was the narrative cohesive, the works. Basically, review my writing the way I'd review any Ranger season. And if you happen to enjoy it, there'll be plenty more where that came from. And hey, who knows, maybe it'll gain enough steam to where I could legitimately make an entire video just talking about the deeper messages thereof. Or at least the deeper messages I tried to fit in there. That would make me obscenely happy, not gonna lie, but one step at a time. The links to the story can be found in the comments and the description down below. As of writing this, I have it in 2 places, but if you guys know or could offer suggestions regarding where else it should be, that'd be great too. So, here's to a great 2018, filled with love, thought, and of course, power. You guys mean a lot to me, so I'll keep working hard for you, for as long as I reasonably can. This has been your friendly neighborhood Disney Brain, and as always, thank you so much for watching.